Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about county resource management plans, how they fit into the big federal picture of land planning on public lands. As a lot of the counties in the state are a majority of federally controlled lands, this becomes a really important issue. Joining us for a conversation is the county level perspective, Jim Matson, a very active commissioner from Kane County, joining us. Thanks for making the trip again, Jim.
You bet.
And from the State Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office, that is a mouthful,
Yes, it is.
Redge Johnson, who is the liaison to guys like Jim around the state. Redge, thank you for joining us for this conversation. What is the distinction between just cooperating with a public land agency and coordinating with them? Some people would not see a difference.
You know, in any kind of an effort that goes on in terms of land management planning with the federal agencies, Forest Service and BLM, you know, there's a set of processes in place, and most of those have shown up as primarily as cooperating agencies, as if the two agencies themselves will cooperate with each other. But there are some sidebars on that limit, you know, what you might possibly be able to accomplish in that setting. And with us in our county, we're strongly committed to these resource plans that have just recently started to develop and evolve over time. And with that, we intend to be coordinating our resource objectives directly with the federal agencies and being able to work in both environments and bring them together or separate them apart as we need to be able to get to the objectives that we want and require.
So, Reg, without what was it, House Bill 323, right, that set this up, without 323 that passed a couple of years ago in the legislature, would counties like Jim's actually be able to get into this coordinating posture with a federal agency?
So there were a couple of counties that had done this prior to HB 323, but this was the first time a state has done it with all counties in the state and then used those county plans to help develop a state resource management plan. So under the Federal Lands Policy Management Act, or FLPMA, it does offer the states certain rights, or local governments. You have state, local, and tribal lands that if they have approved resource management plans, then these federal agencies are supposed to be as consistent as possible under the law with those approved resource management plans. So it gives us an extra weight when we're in discussions with BLM or Forest Service if we have these plans in place. And this process was attempted twice before, once under Governor Rampton and once under Governor Leavitt. But this was the first time we've been able to bring it to fruition and get all 29 counties and all 29 counties to develop a plan plus the state plan in place.
Does that funding and these resource management plans with data behind them, does that make them more compelling for the federal agencies to have to perform to what the county is seeking if they're coordinating with them?
It certainly makes it stronger when we're making our arguments with them versus it being just the opinions of a county or the opinions of a state. To actually have data behind it really helps, and we're seeing some good results as the fact that we've gone through that process and gathered the data, I believe.
Yes, and also at county level, that opportunity to identify what those elements are and the opportunities are has helped us fine-tune where our focus is going to be. Without that, I don't think we'd be looking at that to the degree that we can now.
Jim makes a great point there in that the county plans are very local and specific, and the state plan is more overarching.
Do these plans actually help confront conflicting policies with the federal agencies? Are they more bound to listen to you with a good data-driven resource management plan when you say, we want to do this, our plan says this, we've adopted it, the state's adopted it, and you're going the other direction?
We think it does. There's an opportunity for agencies at all levels, so the local level, the state level, and the federal level, to identify where we can all work together on those issues. And if we have the data driven behind it, it does help. And sometimes it helps the federal agencies to do what they would like to do, but for one reason or another they may be tied to a certain policy or a certain regulation. We can say, hey, look, at the local level, we would like these beetle kill trees taken care of, for safety, health, safety, and welfare of the citizens, for our watershed, for things like that. And so we're able to push projects through to fruition that maybe you wouldn't be able to otherwise.
So there's one other element of FLTMA that we haven't really talked about. We've talked about, coordinating, cooperating, but there's also consistency. Can you kind of clear the air on what a consistency element is in FLTMA?
Sure. So the three things that you have are cooperating agency, which is a formal process that we go through where we sign up as a cooperating agency, then we are able to work with them early and often, we hope. Then coordination is an ongoing process where with these plans we go through. And then consistency review is where we have these local and state plans. As much under the law as possible. They're supposed to be as consistent as possible under the law, I think is how the language goes. So with that, if our resource management plans, either at the county or state level, says that we would like to have a beetle kill infestation taken care of within 6 months after identification of the, so that's very consistent. And sometimes you don't see that in the federal side as a time frame being put to it. They want to take care of the beetle, but there's not always a time frame. So sometimes we're able to speed up, say, hey, our plan says this, we want you to be consistent and have that beetle kill problem taken care of within a specific time. So that's how we help move some of these projects along. Please be consistent with what our plans say. And we're seeing a lot more willingness of the federal agencies to work with us on those consistency issues. But that's the consistency side part of it.
I think the dangling opportunity is timeliness too of these actions. As you mentioned, a beetle kill process or a fire and a fire salvage afterwards. Let's deal with those things as rapidly as we can instead of just hanging around waiting for some budget element to show up that drives it 3 or 4 years in the future, and the values are all gone and messed up. So.
Are there situations in the past, I have some come to mind, I don't know if they're applicable or not, but I look at the horse situation in the West Desert. I look at Dixie Mountain and the beetle kill and the resultant fire. I look at the revegetation at Mill Flat. I look at all these different things that have happened with fires, with resource degradation, with these time frames that have all been heavily litigated. Sage grouse, there's another big one. Had this been in place, would this have made these situations different on the ground today than they are now?
I absolutely think they would. In fact, to the point that where if we can jointly set priorities on how to deal with this, the WRI efforts that have gone on, with the habitat and landscape-based treatments that are out there treating that large bunch of, or that whole biomass mess that's out there, by having targets and objectives set, we can move forward in that direction. We're also partners in that process, so we're not completely dependent upon the federal budget to get that stuff done, so we can do those things jointly.
I agree with that. There are some challenges. You brought up wild horses. That's one of them. There are some things where this is going to work really well for us to speed up this process and to get the projects done. There are some, like the wild horse issue, where that's a congressional rider that's on that, and that's kind of what's slowing it up, not so much BLM not wanting to take care of it, but some of the constraints that they have. So there are gray areas in there that we have to work through. But if we have the language in these plans, I think it will help in the long run, and it might actually help put some pressure on Congress to take care of some of these issues. So.
Can you force them to redirect their funding? If you're saying, we got to deal with this beetle kill in 6 months, and they're saying, well, we don't have the funding for it, and you say, yeah, but this is in our plan, you got to be consistent, is that going to make them shuffle things around?
I think so. When we can also offer up funds, to help augment that process, but I think we can start to target that and have that taken care of in that fashion.
What does somebody sitting in Sandy, Utah, in their living room watching this right now, who doesn't really, have one bat of the eye thought about a county resource management plan, what should they take away that's relevant to them?
To me, I think they ought to take away the thought that there is a process in place at the county level that will help deal with those landscape opportunities and what we have to do in terms of protection and opportunities as we move forward. So it just isn't a big gray or a white hole. It's going to have something in it, that we can work on.
I think one of the things they need to be aware of, the CUP project brings water from the Uinta Mountains all the way to the Wasatch Front. So they should be concerned about the forest health in the Uintas, even though it's not in their county, about how that could affect their water and the delivery of those waters. Also for recreation. A lot of these folks like to go down and recreate in those areas and those roads, whether they're RS-2477 roads or the Hole in the Rock roads and RS-2477 road. A lot of these plans identify those areas that they want to have recreation in, or they want these roads to be open for recreation. So there's a lot of things that impact the urban Wasatch Front that are identified in these plans, and we want the best health of the ecosystem out there while also protecting the economies of the rural areas.
Gentlemen, good point. Thank you so much for the conversation. We're going to take a break from the county seat. When we come back, the deed has been done. The resource management plans have been completed. But just how much work did it take to make that happen? We'll find out when we come back on the ground.